Namo Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa.
Good afternoon. We will continue with the lecture number 11. Last week we discussed about the rupa, the corporeality. From today onwards we will be having 6 lectures mainly focused on the Nāma, that is mentalities. Already we know that Nāma is twofold, as citta and cetasikas. So the handouts will be given. There are two handouts for today's lecture. Handout number 3 is for the mentalities in general sense, and then the handout number 4, which will start from the page number 4, it's for the consciousness, and it will continue in the next week even. And there will be another handout for the cetasikas, and also another handout for the mentalities second part. So altogether these 6 lectures will have 4 handouts: mentality part 1, consciousness, mental factors, and the mentalities part 2. Because in the mentality part 2 I will be talking about after gathering the fundamentals about citta and cetasika, we'll be talking about mentalities as a whole, the very important characteristics. So mentality means they are among the paramattha dhammas. They are more subtler. They are subtler than the corporeality, and sometimes we call it arupa. When we say subtle than the corporeality, it also includes the nibbana, but we don't normally call nibbana mentalities. Pali term for mentalities normally is the Nāma. The word Nāma comprises both mentalities and nibbana, according to Abhidhamma perspective. But here we'll be addressing only on mentalities like chittas and cetasikas, right? Only chittas and cetasikas. So they too are paramattha dhammas, hence they also have intrinsic natures. They are not things, as we discussed in the first, starting from the previous lectures, but they are different kinds of characteristics. The materiality, in the corporeality, we talked about the characteristics such as hardness, cohesion, heat, and so forth. But in the mental sphere, we are talking about mental actions such as knowing an object, attaching to an object, tasting the flavor of an object, recognizing an object, understanding the true nature of an object, being ignorant about an object. Such mental acts are what we call the mentalities. They are not things, they are just natures. Hence they are also called paramattha dhammas. They can be empirically proven, empirically experienced, and they played a huge role in our lives. Actually, where the part we think, by which we think, we consider the self, is mainly this mental part, mental element. So the next point is, if we go to 3.1, the first paragraph, like corporeality, at the end of the paragraph, like corporeality, mentalities too exist in clusters. They also arise in clusters. There is no conditioned reality that arises alone. Always conditioned realities arise in clusters together with some other realities. That is a very basic fundamental of the Theravada tradition. I will be discussing this point when we come to the lecture under causality. But the thing is, regarding the corporeality, when they exist in a cohesive cluster, they happen to manifest certain physical attributes. That's why they manifested as things, like rupa kalapas. That's why we see in the outside world, like the trees, tables, houses, and so forth. But in contrast, the mentalities, where even though they appear in clusters, they arise together with more mental actions. They happen in groups of mental actions. still they do not manifest any physical attribute. So then they are called arupa. They don't manifest as things. They are just mental functions, mental actions. So that is a very important point that we have to keep in mind. Then 3.2 suggests that mentalities are twofold, like citta and cetasika. Citta and viññāṇa are synonymous terms. Cetasikas, in terms of Abhidhamma found in Theravada tradition, we have 52 cetasikas. This number changes according to different traditions. So this is another point that I want to emphasize. So the number of cetasikas is 52. It's exclusive to Theravada tradition. The thing is the Nāma. Now we should know what is the meaning of Nāma. Nāma in Pali has few definitions. Nāma has few definitions. The most commonly known is its bending nature towards an object. So Nāma is a noun. This has few definitions. First one is namatiti. Nāma. Namatiti means aramana namati. The reality which bends towards an object is called the Nāma. Namati is to bend. So then we also have this namati for denoting or expressing paying homage. Right? Namami Buddham we normally call. Because when we pay homage, normally we bend our body. Right? So namati is Nāma. The realities which bend towards an object is called Nāma. Here bending means these mental realities, mentalities exist always cognizing an object. Cognizing object means referring to an object or focusing towards an object. They don't exist without knowing and cognizing an object. It is impossible in the Theravada tradition to discuss about mentality or Nāma without an object. So therefore, mentalities means the realities which cognizes, which focuses, which refers to object. In the corporeality, we don't have this kind of a cognizing ability. We discussed this briefly in the previous lecture. The most conspicuous difference in the Rupa and Nāma is, Nāma has the characteristic of cognizing, knowing an object. Rupa does not have this ability. So that is the main characteristic difference. Hence, therefore, these mentalities we should know. A Pali name is given based on this characteristic. They bend towards an object. Bending doesn't mean a physical bend, like a hand is bent or the body is bent. Here, bending means the mentality always refers or focuses towards an object. That is the first point. Then we come into also when we say focusing towards an object, we normally say cognizing an object. There are two types of cognition that I'll be discussing on this book. Cognition. There are two types of cognition. First cognition is the cognition done by the citta alone. Citta means, we'll discuss this in a brief after a few minutes. Citta it does a cognition. Cognition here means done by citta means it delimits a certain object and focuses on a particular object, leaving apart the other objects. That is the cognition done by the citta. But this cognition is a very primary level of cognition. Actually, the effective cognition we find in our lives is a combination of a cognition done collectively by citta and cetasikas together. It means when the citta focuses upon an object, there are some other mentalities which taste the flavor, which recognizes the object, which sometimes get attached to the object, sometimes get ignorant about the object, in some cases understanding the object. So these kinds of another sub-actions are also involved in this cognition. But when we talk about the citta exclusively, we also call that citta as the cognizing element or action of cognition. So if we just explicitly deal with this cognition of citta in a separate way, like if we treat it as a separate element, we find that the cognition done by citta is a very primary level of cognition which has no effectiveness at all. So the effectiveness, what I mean is, with the citta, we do actions, we think, we talk, we eat, we do verbal actions, physical actions, mental actions. All these effective actions are possible when the citta arises together with other mentalities and perform the functions as a group. So therefore, there are two types of cognitions in the tradition. The first type is the cognition done by citta. Is a citta alone I am talking. Then the collective cognition. Collective cognition. So collective cognition means the cognition done by the groups of mentalities, cluster of mentalities together. If we go to the page, footnote number 3 of the first page, footnote number 3 in the first page, there is an explanation about these two types of cognition. In this book, the word cognition has two meanings. First is the collective act of cognition done by one cluster of mentalities. Second is the function of consciousness alone being aware of an object. From here onwards, for the convenience in reference, first type of cognition will be addressed as collective or cohesive cognition. So it's a term that I adapted, right? Then, while the second type of cognition, exclusive to the consciousness, will be referred as the act of cognition. So here, sorry for that, this should be number 2 and this should be number 1 in the book, right? So actually, collective cognition is in the footnote is the number 1 cognition. The cognition done by the citta alone is the number 2 type of cognition. So whenever I refer to the collective cognition, I will be referring as collective cognition or cohesive cognition. And then if I refer to the cognition done by the citta alone, I'll be referring as a just mere cognition. So that is a terminology that are adapted for the easy references. So then, among these, in this collective cognition, so when we say a collective cognition, it has the action of citta, it has the actions of other mentalities. So in this collective cognition, the basic primary act is the function done by the citta. Because the reason is, citta does the delimitation of an object. So after the object has been delimited, then the other cetasikas can function upon that object. But it happens together, it happens at the same time. But among this collective cognition action, which involves various types of actions done by different mentalities at the same time, citta is the forerunner. I'll be talking about this in the next handout when we come to consciousness very deeply. So the first point I want to say is, so we should know these two types of cognitions, which will govern the whole handout, throughout the handout. Then the first definition is namatiti Nāma. All the mentalities are called Nāma because they bend towards a particular object. Then we go to the second definition. If you can go to the page, paragraph number 3.4 in the second page, there's another definition for Nāma. Right? Another definition for Nāma. These all definitions are found in the commentarial literature, but based on looking at their characteristics. These realities are also called Nāma because they cause the objects to bend towards each other. So bending towards each other. So in Pali we normally call it Nāma. Nāma. Actually, this is one way of giving a definition. There are two ways of giving definition. Sometimes you may get confused. In some cases, we give a full sentence. So here, if I make a complete sentence, Ārāmana Namatiti. Namatiti Nāma. I have given it in the handout. Here I just gave a phrase like Nāma Nāma. This is also one way of giving definition. So it's like by means of bending, causing to bend, right? By means of causing to bend, it's called Nāma. So these are both definitions. There are two ways of giving definitions in this sense: giving a sentence and also just giving the emphasizing upon the meaning. So Namanatena, if you are good in if you have learned Pali, you know this Namati is normally a transitive, or it can be used. It is an intransitive word that the subject bends itself. So Namanatta means a causative verb. Causative means it causes others to bend. So here bending means, in the first place we talk about the mentalities bend themselves. They themselves bend towards an object. The second definition, they cause the object to bend towards them. So these are all figurative type of explanations. So when that is bent, they cause the object to bend towards each other. It means in a collective cognition, citta and cetasika arise together. So when we say a collective cognition, citta, cetasikas arise together, they focus on an object. So in this collective cognition, they support each other. There is a mutual support to each other. So because citta arises, the cetasikas can focus on an object. When the cetasikas arise, citta can focus on object. So they need the support of each other to know an object. There's a mutual support. So when in the first sentence we call the mentalities bent towards an object, also in another way the Buddhist tradition says this same action of knowing an object, focusing an object, can be said in the other way around. The object bent towards the citta, an object bent towards the mentalities. So in the other way around, the definition comes, the citta, because of the citta, cetasikas are able to know the object, therefore citta causes the object to bend towards the cetasikas. The other way around, cetasikas cause the object to bend towards the citta. So this is just a way of saying. The actual phenomenon is that citta cetasikas arise knowing an object. So these sayings gives us different approaches, because different people may understand, different beings may understand the meaning when it is saying different ways. That is why in Buddhism we have various types of definitions. Some definitions we may prefer to some person, doesn't prefer to another person. The same way the Paticcasamuppada doctrine has been explained in various ways. So it prefers to different beings, different temperaments. So likewise, this is another approach of explaining the Nāma. Then another definition is 3.5, Nāma karanattena Nāma. So the definition can be explained in two ways. The first way is the 3.5.1, Nāmantarā-na-pajjanatu means names of these realities never change as the names of corporeality changes. So that the commentary gives an example. So when the hardness, the four great elements exist in a certain pattern, we give them names. Like when they exist in a certain way, we call it a pot. Sometimes if it appears in a different form, we call it a mat. We may call it a house. So likewise, based on their appearance, these material elements are given different names. But it's not like this. The mentalities are not like this. Mentalities are given, always referred by their original name. They don't come into different forms like the corporeality. So the commentators used to say these names for the mentalities are always used in their actual form. So it's not like the corporeality. Based on the form, we use different names. So then also we should know that, but when we go into the Buddhist literature, in the suttas and Abhidhamma, you find the same reality can be explained in various ways based on these different secondary functions or secondary characteristics. But this doesn't mean that it's a difference of a name. It's not a change of a name. Because if one reality possesses different characteristics, aiming on these characteristics, naming the reality differently is not a change of the name. Because naming happens basically, the foundation of a naming is its own characteristic or function. If something really possesses such a characteristic, if we name it in that way, it's not a change of a name. So, but in the corporeality, just based on the form they are appeared, we may call it in different names. Such kind of different names are not logical, not applicable to the Nāma. So therefore, there is another definition for Nāma. Then another one is Sada Attanava Katanamataya. So the meaning goes as mentalities as Passa, Vedana, Sanya, and so forth, Chetana, have their original names. Here original names means these names such as Passa and Vedana were not designated by anyone. They deserve those names by nature due to their intrinsic characteristics and function, and hence they are called Nāma. So because of their functioning, because of their qualities, they deserve these types of names. So therefore they are called the Sada Attanava Katanamataya. So since the commentary have these definitions, I offer you. Nāma, then the next one is Nāmayatta Gahana Nāma. Nāmayapta Gahana means realities that should be known by listening to the name are called Nāma. This is a very important definition. Because the Rupa, the material thing, anyone can easily understand. But these mentalities such as Passa, Vedana, Sanya are not perceivable or not understandable, understandable by the normal ordinary people. Only when they study the characteristics of these realities, mentalities, they are capable of knowing or apprehending or focusing on these mentalities. So therefore these mentalities are much profound or much subtler than the Rupa. So therefore they are called Nāmayapta Gahana. Realities that should be known by listening to the name are called Nāma. Ordinary people are unable to capture the mentalities such as Passa, Vedana and Sanya without their natures being explained. Only after understanding the meanings of the words such as Passa, Vedana and Sanya, they are capable in knowing the mentalities in their actual nature. Hence mentalities are called Nāma. Right? They are called Nāma. So these are all together. We have few definitions. I wrote two only on the board. So we have altogether 5 definitions. Right? We have altogether 5 definitions given in the commentary literature for now. So the basic definition is they always bend towards a object, and it means they always refer to a object. So in the Abhidhamma literature, we can call Nāma, Nibbana is also called a Nāma, but in this lecture we only focuses on mentalities as the Nāma. And also we call all the citta cetasikas as the Nāma here. So then we go to the next handout, consciousness, viññāṇa. Citta or viññāṇa. I will be first explaining viññāṇa. Viññāṇa and citta. So normally we translate this as consciousness. Yes, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is it's a good question. She asked that why Nibbana is considered as a Nāma in the Abhidhamma literature. So, but because the Nāma Rupa is mostly conditioned, so therefore how can we call it? Because when we call Nāma Rupa as conditioned realities, Nāma doesn't refer to Nibbana. This reference Nibbana is based on, for example, if you go to the fifth definition, like 3.6. Right, 3.6. This definition, based on this definition, Nibbana can be called Nāma. Right. So and also the 3.52 definitions. So based on different definitions, Nibbana is called Nāma. But Nibbana can never be called a Nāma in the sense of the first definition, like bending towards an object. We don't call it Nāma. Right. But at the same time, if you go to the 3.4 definition, and there is a footnote at the footnote number 5. Footnote number 5. The Mula Tika further, in the third paragraph on the footnote number 5, the Mula Tika further clarifies that though corporeality too has the causal force of Aramana Adhipati Paccaya, it does not cause the mentality to bend towards itself as Nibbana does. Since Nibbana is the utmost comfort, it attracts faultless mentality strongly than any other object. Satipi rupasa arammana paccayadi. So it's a Pali term. So therefore, Nibbana also causes the mentalities to bend towards itself, right? Bend towards itself. So based on a different definition, we call it Nāma. Not in the sense of Nāma Rupa we find in Vipassana, right? So when we find a term, we can have various definitions. So Nibbana is called Nāma because it causes the mentalities, it attracts the mentalities. It is like it's caused the Kusala Citta Cetasikas and Kiriya Citta Cetasikas to bend towards it because of its attractiveness. It's a faultless element, faultless state, right? That's why it's called Nāma. It's not in the sense of conditioned or unconditioned quality, right? Then we come into the consciousness. In the consciousness, 4.1, consciousness is the action of knowing or cognizing an object normally. So this is, it has two many terms that we can use for consciousness: viññāṇa, citta, mano, manasa, and so forth. In this handout, I'll be focusing only on two terms, viññāṇa and citta. Vijnana, Buddha defined the term viññāṇa in the Kajjaniya Sutta as arammanam vijnānātitiko viññāṇa. Vijnānātiti viññāṇa means the reality or the mental reality which knows an object, which specially knows an object, is called viññāṇa. So we should know what is this speciality in knowing. So when we write the word viññāṇa, this is constituted with V prefix plus ña root and na suffix. So when this become ña in the assimilation, so then this na becomes changed into dental lingual na, which is unexplainable in the theological aspect, then viññāṇa. Right? This lingual na, how did it come? We cannot still explain it. So viññāṇa, so this is how it is constructed. So this V indicates the meaning viseshatva. Viseshatva means having discriminated. So when normally visesana is a noun, is the noun for adjectives in Pali. Visesana is equal to adjectives. So what is the function of an adjective? Adjective, when we call a white, we call a red house, a red shirt, for example, a red shirt. When we say a red shirt, the word red, it specifies certain kinds of shirts out of all the other shirts, because there are various shirts with different colors. So when we say red shirt, we are only focusing on certain types of shirts which have a specific color. So the function of adjective is to select a certain groups of nouns from the whole group of the same nouns. It means out of the lot we select only a one part. That is called visesana. So viseshatva here, this meaning also applies to the functioning of viññāṇa. Because viññāṇa or mentalities can know various types of objects in the world. There is a high possibility, there are lots of objects can be known at a certain time. So out of all these objects, viññāṇa focuses on one single object. So one single object means it delimits the object, leaving apart all the other objects. It's like the functioning of an adjective. So viseshatva janana, it means having focused on a particular single object, leaving apart the other objects, and knowing it or focusing it is called the function of viññāṇa. So this is done, the element, the reality which does this is called the viññāṇa. So in the collective cognition that we discussed earlier, this function of viññāṇa is the foremost, is the most basic and most primary. Only when one object is focused upon, so focused on, then the remaining realities, the mentalities can perform their functions regarding that object. So that is the function of the citta, function of the viññāṇa. So even when we say that there are two terms, viññāṇa and citta, it refers to the consciousness, but it addresses different aspects of the consciousness. There is another point. I'll be discussing this point in detail in the last lecture for the mentalities. So when a mentality is being explained, it can be explained in various ways using different terms. The using of different terms means expressing or clarifying the different aspects of this one mentality. So therefore, even though they are synonymous in the apposition, I'll explain this in the last lecture for the mentality, they are in apposition, but they are different meanings. So when we say viññāṇa and citta, they refer to the same thing, but they refer to different aspects of the consciousness. So here the viññāṇa aspect is the consciousness delimits a particular object and knows it, having separated it from the other numerous types of objects. So here there is another point that I want to emphasize. We call it a one single object. So when we call a single object, there are two types of single objects here. First one is actually a one object. If we focus upon a certain Vedana or a citta, then a single group of objects. Single group of objects which share a similar characteristic. Share a similar characteristic. For example, Chetasikas, we know now, they have 52 types of different intrinsic natures. Each Chetasika has its own unique nature. At the same time, in Abhidhamma classifications, we know when the realities are classified into 5 khandas, we get the Sankhara Khanda. In Sankhara Khanda, if we leave apart Vedana and Sanya, also you can include into Sankhara Khanda in a certain way, but anyway, if we leave this apart, we have 50 Chetasikas which has the characteristic, a similar characteristic, to be called them as the Sankhara Khanda. So if you focus on this aspect of the Sankhara aspect, Asankatam Abhisankaroti we normally call, the characteristic of conditioning the conditioned realities. So if we focus on this aspect of all the Chetasikas, we can collectively take them as a one object. Even though at that time the citta may have various numerous Chetasikas as its object, but since the citta focuses upon a very common single characteristic of the Sankhara characteristic, so this group of Chetasikas, even though they are numerous in the number, we still call it one group of a object. So therefore, when I refer as a single object in this book, it can be a one actual single object or a group of objects which share similar characteristics. For example, when we are looking at the outside world through eye consciousness, lots of color rupas come to the eye at the same time. So if we analyze the object, there are lots of rupa ramana there. But still we consider it as a one object because they all share the characteristic of visibility. So likewise, a group also can be considered as a single object when they share a common characteristic. But Nama and Rupa, we cannot observe at the same time because they have contrasting characteristics. But Nama and Rupa, if we consider in the quality of Sankhara, can be taken as a one object. But at that time, we are not focusing on the Nama Rupa aspect. We are talking about the conditioned nature. So likewise, we should know how a group can be called a single object, and then the citta can focus on it. So here in this book, when I say the single object, it either refers to any of them. So then if you go to the next paragraph, all the other mental acts such as feeling, recognition, attachment, ignorance and understanding are possible only when an object has been separately so focused on. Hence the act of consciousness is the foremost in the collective cognition. So the Buddha expressed this meaning in the Dhammapada, in the first stanza. He mentioned mental factors have consciousness as their forerunner, consciousness as their predominant companion, and are produced by the consciousness. So in the very famous stanza in the Manopubbangama, in the two first stanzas, he was referring to this idea. The citta is the forerunner in the collective cognition. Right? The collective cognition. So then the next thing is sometimes, but we should know they arise together. I'll be discussing this in a later paragraph. At the end, I'll be having a critical investigation on this because in some suttas you find the Buddha has explained citta arises first and the consciousness concomitants follow. So how to analyze this in the Theravada perspective? I'll be discussing this in the last lecture of the mentalities. So then we come to the definition of citta. So consciousness means, now we are clear about that, the function of consciousness is to focus upon a certain one single object, having separated it from the other many objects. So then the citta means, there are many definitions that are given to citta. The very famous one you find in the commentary is chinteti cittang, arammanam chinteti cittang. It means a mental element which thinks about an object. So even though we thinks about an object, it's a denotative expression. But the connotative expression is, actually it refers to the viññāṇati, knowing an object. If you go to the 4.41, when consciousness is designated as citta, the term denotes the act of thinking about an object. Aramanam chinte citta, chinteti citta. However, its connotation is still the act of focusing on an object, having separated it from the other. So the commentary says viññāṇati ityattu. So when we explain a Pali term, there is a denotative meaning, connotative meaning. So it means like even though the term implies a certain kind of aspect, but in the ultimate sense, we have a very basic kind of explanation. So then another definition we can find based on the Duttiya Gaddula Baddha Sutta expounded by the Buddha in the Nikayas. He mentions that the citta is a very diverse element. He makes two reasons. The diversity is in the world, especially he was referring to the animal kingdom. He says the diversity of the animal kingdom is because of the citta. The commentary explains this very clearly. Why? Because with various types of cittas, when we do various kammas, the level of kamma differs. So the variety of kamma is based on the variety of the citta. Then when we have various kammas, we have various species we are born into. So therefore, the diversity of the world is basically because of the diversity of the citta. Because the citta causes the kamma to have the diversity. Because of the kamma, we are born in different species. So based on this definition, we call citta karanataya citta. Citta is the element which makes the diversity of the animate world. Then also the same sutta Buddha mentioned is a very nice sutta. If you can refer to this, it gives lots of information, and also it stirs a certain urgency. Buddha was not just giving a philosophical explanation. He was asking us to strive and get rid of this suffering of samsara. That was the main purpose of the sutta. But referring to the sutta, we can have some philosophical aspects. So he also mentioned chittataya citta. It means he asked the monks to look at this diversity of the citta itself. Citta causes the diversity in the animate world. At the same time, citta itself is a diverse element. It's not only in the inanimate world, which is created by the humans, also he mentions. Especially he showed about the pictures. So he mentioned, have you seen these diversified pictures drawn by humans, drawn by the artists? Why is this diversity is there? Because the mind is diverse. So therefore he mentioned the diversity of the animate world made by the humans, and also the inanimate world, which is because of our kamma. The basic reason is the citta. So the commentators form two new definitions based on this particular sutta. Chittataya cittang, citta karanataya cittang. Because citta itself is diverse, so it's called citta. At the same time, it causes the diversity in the world, hence it is called citta. Then we find another two definitions for the citta. In the 4.44, this definition is exclusively only a part of consciousness. So in the next lecture, we will be discussing about various types of cittas and the functionings of cittas. We are unable to discuss today, but in the next week we will be discussing on that in the next week's lectures. So sometimes the citta is called attano santanam chinoti cittam. It means the certain cittas increase or enhance the intensified nature of certain cittas. We normally call the javana cittas. When a person has been doing the same action again and again, his later actions of that becomes more intensified. This happens in the same mental stream according to Abhidhamma, and according to Suttanta ways. This also includes we do some practices in a certain time. When we repeat it again, maybe in another life, still it gets intensified. So it's called asevana-paccaya. Normally we call asevana-paccaya in the main one mental stream, one chitta viti. But also it is applicable to javana cittas, which happen in different chitta vitis, later times, and also even from lives to lives, right? Lives to lives. So here the chinoti means construct. So these cittas, certain cittas construct the mind stream. Constructing means increases the intensified nature of the citta. This is applicable for the javana cittas. Then in another explanation is kamma kilesihi chitanti cittam. Kamma kilesitam means constructed by the kammas and kilesa. So this applies to vipaka, chitta, cetasikas. But I have given in the footnote how it is also applicable to all types of chittas based on the vipassana methods expressed in the Patisambhida Magga. I will not be taking time to explain that. Then in the 4.5 we are talking chitta or consciousness always exists together with mental concomitants. It doesn't never arises alone. And also it happens together, it passes away together. In the Mahavedalla Sutta, Venerable Sariputta mentioned to Venerable Kottita when he was questioned about this Chitta, Vidar, Vedana, Sanya and Panya. He says these are unable to be separated. They exist together. They are inseparable elements. And also when you go to the Anupada Sutta, Buddha explains how the mental factors, mentalities, including the chitta, exist in the separate jhanas. In the Abhidhamma point of view, we call this called Sampayutta Paccaya, meaning chitta chesikas always comes together in an inseparable way. Then, more importantly, in 4.6, some mental factors are utterly necessary for all types of chittas to happen. I will be discussing this in the next lecture today. Then, conditions for the origin of chittas. This is also a very important part that we have to understand. The conditions for the origin of chitta. So there will be various conditions that I will be discussing on today. So today's lecture, now this lecture I'll end up with discussing only about 2 conditions. The remaining conditions I'll continue in the next lecture. And there are 2 types of conditions. Conditions that are common to all types of chittas. Then also we discuss about the conditions which are for the various different types of chittas, which will be discussed on next week. So first one is the we normally call anantara-paccaya. Anantara-paccaya and samanantara-paccaya. Anantara-samanantara-paccaya mean chitta is always supported by the previous chitta. It means one chitta, if a chitta arises, it has to get the support from a previous chitta. So this support of the previous chitta in Abhidhamma literature is explained as anantara and samanantara-paccayas. These anantara and samanantara-paccayas have different explanations given by scholars. I will be following only one explanation because with that I want to emphasize certain aspects of this conditioned nature of the chitta. So anantara-samanantara-paccaya means normally chitta arises and passes away instantly. If I draw it in try to explain it in drawing. So chitta arises and passes away. As soon as chitta passes away, there happens another chitta to occur. Sometimes there can be a time gap in the Nirodha Samapatti because Buddha mentioned that there is no sanya arising during that time, and there is a life called asanya satta in which 500 kappa there is no chitta happening. Only on these 2 occasions, otherwise chitta is continuously arising. When a chitta passes away, another new chitta happens, so it happens in generations. So the Venerable Lady Sayadaw explains now how this anantara-samanantara-paccaya force, paccaya is explained. So chitta means action of cognition, action of cognizing. So this action of cognizing, knowing an object, has a certain speed in cognition. We call it speed in cognition. So this speed is better to translate as a force. In Pali they call it vega, but it's better to translate as a force. So what happens is a chitta action, mental action, knowing an object happens. It passes away as a natural law, but the speed of the chitta, cognizing action, doesn't ceases together with the chitta. This speed or this force causes for another similar mental action to happen. Chitta means knowing an object. So in Pali we call it saramana dhamma. It's called saramana. Saramana means a reality which has an object, which cognizes an object. So this saramana dhamma has a certain speed or certain force. So this force, after the chitta passes away, this force causes for the arouse or causes for the arising of another similar saramana dhamma. It doesn't causes for a different dhamma. It causes for a similar reality to happen. Because of this force, right after that chitta, another new chitta happens, cognizing an object. So saramana dhamma, the force of a saramana dhamma causes for the arising of another saramana dhamma. That is what is explained in the paragraph number 7.4. It's in bold letters. You can see saramana dhamma. In this action of knowing has a force in its cognition and so forth. You can understand this point. Then samanantara-paccaya means this force. Now, according to anantara-paccaya, this conditioning speed or force causes for the arising of another saramana dhamma. At the same time, this force has another attribute. What is that attribute? It means when it causes for another chitta to happen, it also causes to happen the most chitta to happen in an according way. It means the most suitable chitta to happen. So this is a law governed by the citta niyama. Citta doesn't happen as without an order. There is always a specific order in the citta. That is why citta has become an effective element. So therefore, when a certain citta passes away, that force causes for another citta, but a citta that suits for that occasion, for that location, for that moment. For example, if we take this citta as the samanantara citta, their chitta has 14 functions. I'll be discussing them next week. So if we take this sampaticchana chitta, we talk this as sampaticchana chitta. This sampaticchana chitta passes away. Its force causes for another chitta to happen. This should be a samanantara chitta. So sampaticchana means, so with the chakku viññāṇa, what the object has been seen is retaken by the sampaticchana chitta, because there is a shift of the vatu in this mental process. They can be explained logically, but I will not take time to explain it because it is a different explanation in Chitta Vritti. What was seen by the Chakku Viññāṇa is retaken by the Sampaticchana because the actual actions happen, the effective chittas happen in the heart base. Chakku Viññāṇa happens in the eye base. So there is a shift of the location. So therefore Sampaticchana Chitta retakes the object which was taken by the Chakku Viññāṇa. Then what happens? When this chitta takes that object again, it goes into the, it investigates the object. It has a more understanding about the object. Therefore, the sampaticchana chitta, when it causes for the next chitta to arise, because of this, due to this cognition speed, the chitta which arises has a specific function, that is the investigating function. It also can be understood in another way. When a chitta is repeatedly arising on the same object, his understanding about the object starts to get deepened. So therefore, after the sampaticchana chitta, when samanantara chitta arises, it understands the objects more deeply. So also we can say the function of sampaticchana chitta is to receive the object, and the function of samanantara chitta is to investigate the object. So the sampaticchana chitta never supports determine a chitta, because it's too early to determine. Because the chitta has to have more association with the object to come into a determination. It cannot just suddenly come into a determination. It's a non-self function going on. So therefore, after sampaticchana chitta, receiving chitta, there should be an investigating chitta, then comes the determining chitta. So likewise, this paccaya force, the conditioning force, has an attribute, not only arousing the chitta, but also arousing a very suitable chitta at the next place. It causes for the arising of a suitable chitta. So that is the samanantara-paccaya force. So these two paccaya forces, this causes for the chitta to happen after it's passing away. Samanantara-paccaya force causes for a suitable chitta to happen. So this is how it is explained in the commentarial literature. So then, based on this, if you go to the next page, we find, so in the second paragraph, Actually, these two conditional forces, anantara-paccaya-forces and samanantara-paccaya-forces, are not confined to the consciousness, but all the citta chesikas. It means it's not only the consciousness is producing another consciousness, a collective act of cognition produces another collective act of cognition. It means citta chesikas supports the citta chesikas to happen right after them. Then the next paragraph says, the consciousness, based on this, we come into understanding the consciousness exists in generations. It means after one citta passes away, another citta happens, then it keeps on happening in the same manner. Then comes another point worthy paying attention is the mind generation of a certain being is different from that of other beings. There is a singleness in each mind stream which enables it to be distinguished from the other generations of mind. This uniqueness is expressed under, there's a mistake, it's not nānattana, it should be ekattana. Sorry for that, it should be ekatta. Instead of nānatta, we have to change it into ekattana. Right? So this will be discussed in the later chapter regarding conditionality. We'll talk about this in conditionality. So what we have to say is, when we say generations of citta, there is no universal citta which is common to all the beings. Generations of cittas of different beings is unique to that particular being. That is also one thing we have to emphasize. Based on these facts, this fact that there is every citta needs the support of a previous citta. So what is the conclusion? Another conclusion that the Theravadins come is, there is no beginning of the samsara. Why is that? If a citta has to arise, it has to be supported by a previous citta. So therefore, Theravadians advocate, also Buddha also mentioned this in one sutta, that he cannot point out a beginning of this samsara. So there is no beginning of the mind generation, since the support of the previous consciousness is utterly essential for the arising of any sort of consciousness. So with this explanation sometimes become very illogical to our minds. But actually, when someone comes into the Kanka Vitarana Visuddhi, I'll discuss this in the conditionality lecture. So how to overcome this doubt in the Buddhist perspective is not through logical assumption. So when he focuses on the conditioned nature of a citta, when he keeps on focusing, understanding the conditioned nature of the citta, the doubt regarding such a beginningless generation starts to remove it. It starts to remove from the mind. It's not that the doubt about this, like how can there be a generation without a beginning? This will always haunt the mind of a normal being. So this cannot be removed with logical assumption or thinking. This can only be removed by a practitioner in the Buddhist perspective. When he focuses on the conditioned nature of the citta, he finds that he comes into understanding Nāma Rupa is impossible without a cause, and there is, for example, all the Nāma Rupa has a similar nature because he understands them in a general way. So when based on that, he comes into understanding it is impossible to have a first Nāma Rupa. So he removes the doubt, seeing the impossibility of a beginning Nāma Rupa. So that's how he gets rid of this doubt. Otherwise, this is a question that always haunts the mind, always raised even by the Buddhists. How can there be a samsara without a beginning? So I want to emphasize that there is no logical answering for that. It cannot be removed by the logical assumption. It can only be removed with a meditative experience. It's not looking at the past, observing the conditionality of the Nāma Rupa. He finds that there is no possibility that a beginning Nāma Rupa can happen based on this nature. Right? Then we come into the last point of the today's anantara samanantara-paccaya. However, these two forces become weak at the death moment. So for another point is, this force causes for another, force of this citta causes for the arising of other cittas. But at the moment of death, what happens? This force becomes weaker. And the last citta of the life is quite weak, more weaker than all the other cittas. So the force of this anantara samanantara-paccaya is very weak. But at this level, death moment, if a person is not an arahant, defilements and karma brings the supports this mind stream. So with the support of defilements and karma, the final chitta of a life become capable of producing another chitta in the next life. So in the case, if there is no defilements or karma in the mind stream at the dead moment, what happens? Because this the power is weakening in the mind stream, the last chitta is unable to produce another chitta. So the mind stream ceases forever. So when we say the previous chitta is the cause for the next chitta, but it is not the only case at the moment of death. It becomes weaker, it needs the support of karma and kilesa to continue. So the last point, this is the samanantara-paccaya-forces supporting the chitta. The last point of this lecture is the object. So object is, there should be an object for all the chittas to happen. Collective cognition is impossible without a chitta. So in the Theravada tradition, this is given with a simile like a feeble old man. A feeble old man cannot stand alone by himself. So in the same way, chitta chetasikas cannot arise without an object. Also we should know that when a mentality is cognized as a particular object, mentalities and object are not the same. They are two different things. Mentalities are the action of knowing an object, focusing an object. Object is the something which is being known through the mentality. So objects are also a very important condition for the chittas to happen. So these are the points that I want to discuss. So we discussed about the definitions of Nāma, definition of viññāṇa and citta, which are synonyms for the consciousness. And then we discussed about the conditions for the origin of citta, which were very, very salient points in the Theravada tradition. Up to now, we discussed the anantara, samanantara-paccaya force given by the previous citta to the following citta, and then also the support of the condition aramana, object for the chitta to happen. And based on this anantara, samanantara-paccaya force, we came into few understanding. Chitta exists, consciousness exists in generations, and also the conscious is not only the consciousness, all the mentalities support the following mentalities to happen by this conditional force. At the same time, there is no beginning of the mind streams, because always every chitta needs the support of a previous chitta. So these are the points that I want to emphasize. So we'll start in another few minutes the next lecture. If you have any questions.